Hello and welcome everyone to lesson 25 in this Chess Beginner to Winner series. And today we will be talking about attacking the uncastled king. A pretty cool subject in chess. I can't stress it enough. It is very important to get your king castled to safety. And we'll see why that is here with two games that I'm going to review. And they both feature Garry Kasparov. Some would say, definitely one of the greatest players of all time, and some would say the greatest player of all time. But some people say Fischer or Magnus Carlsen, of course. So let's take a look at these games. In the first one, Garry Kasparov had the black pieces here. So let's see what he does. So c4. And now this is the English defense. Garry Kasparov responds with e5, which is one of the best responses to the English opening here. So now we have knight to c3, just taking control of the center, really putting a lot of pressure on this d5 square. And now Kasparov responds with d6 to fortify this pawn in the center, get ready to possibly develop his bishop along this diagonal. Now we have d4, placing two pawns side by side in the center here. And now a capture, queen captures. And then knight to f6. So just developing another piece. And g3, getting ready to fianchetto this bishop on this nice open diagonal here. Knight to c6. So attacking the queen could also block the path of the bishop a little bit. And the queen retreats. Now here it looks like this could be an awkward square, putting it in front of the bishop, but the bishop plans to go here to b2 and aim up here along this central diagonal and attack the king side here. So now another developed piece, bishop to e6, putting pressure on this unprotected pawn, and the knight blocks here. Just jumping up into the position, maybe trying to trade off some pieces. And at this point, Kasparov is known to be a wild attacking player, very tactical. And by trading off some pieces early, that could alleviate some of the pressure that Kasparov could put on white with a lot of pieces still on the board. So now we have this knight maneuvering here first, and this b3 move to get ready to fianchetto the bishop. And now the knight jumps in here attacking the queen. So the queen moves to the best square, e3 here, attacking the knight. Kasparov retreats back. And now the bishop move here. Bishop to b2, fianchettoing, attacking the knight. The computer says this is a mistake, that it would have been better to fianchetto this bishop, get closer to castling, get that king to safety. So if you look at the king stuck in the center here, he can be attacked from the left side, the right side, or head on, three different directions. But once a king castles, so if white would castle to the king side, he can only be attacked from two different directions, head on or from the left, because nothing can come from off the board on the right. So it reduces the attacking angles by a third once you castle. So just remember, castling does make a big difference in king safety, and it helps get your rook activated that's just stuck here in the corner doing nothing. All right, so now Kasparov plays c6, which the computer says is a great move, and we'll see why here. The knight retreats, attacking the bishop, trying to knock off the bishop pair. And Kasparov attacks the queen, another great move here. So the queen moves up to the center. Usually it can be good to centralize your queen, but here the computer says that's a mistake. That knight attacking and capturing this bishop in the center would have been better, because then you would have, even though your queen would be under attack, you would capture a piece and have a counterattack on their queen. So now Kasparov plays a brilliant move, knight to e4 here. So jumping this knight right into the center of the board with the other knight, they're combining to put pressure on f2 here and capture, and then the rook would be trapped here in the corner. But it looks like the queen could just capture this knight. Now that's not possible. I can show you what would happen if the queen captures. We see the evaluation drops drastically, and this is a blunder because the queen could move down here with check, and then the king is under attack here. So it's forced to move, and then we would have a capture, forking the king and the queen. The king would have to move again. It looks like king to c2 would be best, and then the queen would be picked off. So that is why that knight cannot be captured there, why it was such a brilliant move. All right, so we go back one. After this brilliant move by Kasparov, his opponent responds with bishop to h3, attacking this knight, and that's an inaccuracy. So if we go back, looks like, well, even here the computer is saying bishop to h3, but then once we move, now it's saying b4 is better. So now a miss by Kasparov here. He attacks the king. It looks like king to f1 would be best, to just retreat over to the side here. And that's what he does. Now Kasparov, in checking the king in the center, he succeeded in stranding the king in the center of the board. The king's making a run for it over here to the king side, but his pieces are already uncoordinated. There's an attack with these two knights. The queen is jumping in here. The bishop is kind of aiming down in that direction. So the game continues with a knight jumping in here, attacking the rook, the bishop. So now we have this response by white. White jumps up here, trying to eliminate some of these defenders. The computer says this is a mistake, that it would have been better to develop this other knight here. And now we have capture. The knight jumps in there. You know, and white is trying to get some kind of counterplay against Kasparov here. The king just steps to the side. So the computer says that the best move would be bishop to e7. Now we have king to d7. This is a good move because it prevents the fork possibility over here in the future. It attacks the knight, forcing white to respond here. So white, you know, responds with a mistake, it looks like. And one advantage to stranding a king in the center and then attacking that king in the center is that it produces chaos, and we see how white's pieces are uncoordinated here, and they're not really working together well. The king is stuck in the middle. This rook is stranded over here. This rook hasn't even moved out to do anything. The knight's on the edge of the board. The one knight that's up here doing something is under attack and unprotected. So the game continues with this capture. Now the queen captures, and then we have a pin of this knight to the queen here. So the knight steps aside with check. So a discovered, well, not a discovered, but a move here, checking the king. So the queen is still safe. But after capture, if we look at the material now, it looks like Kasparov is ahead with this knight here on the edge of the board. And the king is just stranded here still in the center. So capture, or excuse me, not a capture, but the queen slides over here to attack this unprotected knight. And with check, so capture. Now, if we look at the material, we have 6 pawns to 6. And material is even, but the difference is this queen is firing down here towards the king. The rook is lining up here in the center on this half open file. White has one good bishop here. The queen is on the edge. I mean, at least it's aimed in the vicinity of Kasparov's king, but these 2 rooks are doing nothing, and the king is not very safe here. So the game continues with the development of this bishop, and this will also allow this final piece that's not doing anything to jump in here and assist in the attack. So this pawn is just given up by Kasparov. Computer says that's an inaccuracy to capture this, and after that move, it looks like black is winning. So we'll see why here in a second. It looks like just moving the rook over here would have been better. So another brilliant move by Kasparov. Attacking with the rook with check, but moving to a spot where the rook can just be captured, and that's what white does, the best move. A recapture. So Kasparov has just given up his rook here for the bishop. And now if we look at the material, it looks like Kasparov's opponent, Dr. Robert Hubner, if I pronounce that correctly, who is also a grandmaster, is +3 ahead here. And so the game continues with the king on the run now, definitely just stuck in the center here. So what will Kasparov do to keep this attack going? Well, he jumps up here with the queen, checking, sending the king running, and then he checks again, just putting the pressure on this king and not letting up. So the king just keeps on running, but now we have another check. King tries to hang on, and the bishop joins in this attack. And here, it looks like the computer preferred another check by the queen, but this move brings another attacking piece into the king hunt. So the king, runs for it here, king to c3, and the final move in the game was queen to e5 check here. So it looks like the computer preferred bishop attacking with check, but we'll see why this was a resigned game in this position. It looks like there's a mate in 12 or earlier, depending what the king does. So the game may have continued with the king trying to run up here, but then check by the bishop. The king would try and run over here to the corner and hide. And now the king moves up here to help cut off any escape by the king. Queen moving over here, just giving itself up. So at this point, the game would be a loss. Kasparov could just capture the queen and grab material here and just go for the win that way. And that's interesting as well. Why would you want to give that up? So the computer is just bringing up some kind of crazy variation. If we go back and see it, look at some moves that may be more realistic. So after that, check. The king would go into the corner. Maybe a more realistic move would be this. because now you're trapping the king and threatening this mate right here with the queen on a5, but you're also threatening to capture this rook. And then if this rook captures, you capture, and you would just be ahead a rook here. Maybe this pawn would be captured, and then you'd have 4 pawns to 6. So anyway, this is one possibility the game could have gone. All right, so if I look at the game review on this, where the king was just stuck in the center, it looks like Kasparov played at a 2850 level versus 2250. And it says black got the better of white in that game. Black played better than white in the opening, and black capitalized on their chances in the middle game. And it looks like Kasparov played a 92.8% middle game play there. But now the accuracy rating, Kasparov played 94.4 versus 83.7. And 94.4, that's pretty outstanding. And if you think that is, pretty great, wait till you see what happens in this second game here where Kasparov has the white pieces. And we'll take a look at that now, because that game is probably even crazier. So the next game, Kasparov with the white pieces this time. And this game was played in 1982, early in Kasparov's career, before he became the world champion. So Kasparov was world champion. Let's see if I remember correctly. Was it 1985 to 2000? Something like that, for about 15 years. So now we have Kasparov with the white pieces, a dangerous attacking player. And let's see once again what makes him so dangerous, especially if the king is trapped in the center here, and how Kasparov attacks an uncastled king in the center. All right, so d4, knight f6 is the response. Kasparov responds with c4, just taking control of the center, since he can't play e4 or the knight would capture. So now we have e6, which helps develop this bishop and gets black to be able to castle his king quickly here. Now Kasparov responds with knight to f3, just developing this knight. One thing this does is, instead of developing this knight right away where this bishop could pin the knight, possibly capture it and break up these pawns, or at least put pressure on that knight by pinning it, this knight to f3 move is played, because now if the bishop plays here, there's a possibility of maybe blocking with the bishop and trading off what will probably be a bad bishop. Once this pawn moves to e3, the bishop could be blocked in. So now this move here, the Queen's Indian defense, instead of the King's Indian where you fianchetto a bishop over here on the King side, the Queen's Indian fianchettos a bishop on the Queen side over here, aiming straight down towards the King. So now knight to c3 is played, and the bishop lines up on the center here, and then a3. This move now prevents that bishop from being able to come down here and pin the knight. It could also help with a push of the b pawn up here. And now black tries to fight back in the center. And what does Kasparov do? He attacks, capturing the more valuable central pawn with his less valuable flank pawn. Recapture by the knight, attacking Kasparov's knight. And the queen just develops to the second rank to help guard the knight. And the king side possibly. So now we have c5. Putting more pressure on the center here. Kasparov ignores that, putting both pawns in the center, attacking the knight, forcing his opponent to make a decision on what to do with that knight. The knight captures, pawn captures, that way the queen can keep an eye on this e-pawn, which is under attack by the bishop here. Now we have bishop to e7, and the computer is kind of hesitant about that move. Looks like it didn't really like that move so much. All right, so let's go. Well, we could go back and see why. This move looks okay, but looks like it prefers knight to d7, developing this knight towards the center. So now bishop to e7. Let's see what comes about from that move. You know, why the computer didn't like it. Bishop to b5 is the best move, and that's what Kasparov plays here. So we have a block with the bishop here, and Kasparov moves back, creating this battery that aims towards the king side, and he leaves this bishop here, which, you know, what is the bishop doing here now but maybe just blocking the knight in? But now the computer earlier said that that knight should move to d7 anyway, so let's take a look at what happens next. The knight does go to d7. We have castling, so Kasparov was sure not to neglect his king safety, and he got his king out of the center. But now we see black is still left here with the king in the middle, the uncastled king. And what does he do? He plays h6 here and neglects to move that king, castling to safety. He's probably worried about this pawn pushing forward and then the queen and bishop battery lining up on that h-pawn. So, you know, that looks to be why he waited for castling here and pushed this pawn. But the computer says better would have been to just capture in the center. You know, once again, capture this pawn, more valuable pawn with your less valuable pawn. But in this case, it would have just led to this c-pawn recapturing, and Kasparov would still have these two strong central pawns. But it would open up the c-file where maybe this rook could move here and line up on the queen. So h6 was played. It's followed up with rook to d1. The computer said that that move wasn't the best. It looks like an immediate d5 move would have been better. Just gaining space in the center, preventing the knight from being able to move here. So now we have rook to d1. The queen trying to develop and line up on the king side here. Computer doesn't like that move at all. So instead it prefers, once again, just capturing in the center and opening up the c-file. So the queen moves here. And we have a great move by Kasparov, pushing this pawn, sacrificing a pawn after capture, capture, bishop captures, and we see that the king is going to be stuck here in the center, the uncastled king, and Kasparov is trying to pounce on that king that's been left in the center. So he moves here, pinning this knight to the king. And it looks like the best move is to block with the bishop here, but instead we have this attack on the bishop, which the computer does not like. Now that is ignored with this attack, a brilliant move, leaving the bishop under attack, counter-attacking with the other bishop that could be picked off by the queen, and that's what happens. The queen captures. Now, is that even the best move in the position? It looks like just queen to b7 would have been a better move. But the pawn is captured. And now we have a capture here. And to keep material somewhat even here, or to go ahead in material, the king captures. And it looks like that's the best move according to the computer. But now that allows a capture here. So if we look at the material, black is ahead here by 1 pawn. But his king has been stuck. His king is stuck in the center and it's under attack. And Kasparov is trying to move in on this king now. The king moves to the side, and that is not the best way to go. It looks like the best thing would be to move in the other direction, over here to the king side. But once the king moves over here, we have the other rook joining in on the action, jumping to e1, threatening to capture this bishop with a check. So the bishop moves and helps block this rook. And it's also, lining up here with a possible attack on h2 if this knight moves. So now we have a great move by Kasparov. Using his rook and queen together, attacking black's queen. The queen moves, and he could have immediately captured again, taking this pawn, checking the black king, but instead he waits and activates the other rook, bringing it into the center. So not only is it controlling the open e file, now it has the ability to move along this 4th rank as well, and the queen is sent running. The queen is also trying to protect this f-pawn up here. And so maybe I misspoke earlier. If the queen, let's go back, because I think I said that could have been captured, but it couldn't. The rook can't capture because the queen is still covering that. So excuse me there. The queen moves to cover that, and the attack continues on that queen. So now the queen has to move and can no longer protect that. So now we have the capture with check. The king is moving up here to b8. Now, is that the best place to go? It looks like that is best according to the computer, to just run up here to b8. But Kasparov has the king on the run. And now we have an attack on this unprotected bishop. And we see how the rooks are just taking control, one on the 7th rank, the other on the 6th, attacking a piece. The queen is ready to jump up here into the center and try and join in on the attack. This knight maybe at some point could try and jump up here and assist. But what is black? What's black's rooks doing? They're just sitting there in the corner doing nothing, basically. So now we have, finally, the rook moves out of the corner and helps to try and defend here. And we have c4 attacking the queen. And the queen retreats back here, trying to help defend. And Kasparov sends his knight in. The only piece, other than the king, I guess, and maybe some of these pawns, but out of his 4 pieces here, the one that really wasn't doing as much, it jumps in to help with this attack as well. And now the queen retreats because the bishop can't capture that knight, or the rook would have taken the queen. So now we have another brilliant move by Kasparov, retreating back to b1 here, threatening to capture here with check, and then the rook is covering this square, so if the queen blocked, we would just have a mate up here on b7. So, and excuse me, if I go back, after this queen to b1 move, this is where his opponent resigned. He just gives up because of all this attacking material just lining up here. black has all his pieces squeezed in here on the back rank. And now the computer says the game may have continued with the queen just giving itself up here. Then we would just have a capture, of course. Bishop. Then maybe some further play like this, but with that extra queen, there wouldn't be much that black could do. So let's take a look at this position. Is there anything else? It looks like queen to c7, queen to b7. Both moves would lead to the queen being captured. If we had this rook move like this, well then queen would capture with check. The rook would try and block the check. Let's go back and just take a look here. What if the king jumped into the corner? King to a8. Okay, that would lead to the queen just capturing because the rook over here is covering that as well. So if the king tried to jump into the corner, the queen could just mate up here on a7. So it looks like the best move here is to block with the rook. But then we would have rook capturing with check, forcing the queen to capture. But now the queen could go over here, capture the other rook with check, and then the best move would be to retreat the king to the side, and then the rook captures here. And also, because of the rook and queen battery, if we have a check, the rook could block down here to prevent a back rank mate. So now it looks like queen to b1 is best to force this rook down here. And then now it recommends the best thing to do is capture and just give up your queen. Because if we have, well, queen to b7, the rook would pin the queen. Yeah, so no matter what, it's not looking good. If we had something like this, queen to b5, well then the pawn could just capture the queen. So anyway, you get the picture. It just turned into a disaster because that king was stranded in the center. Now, if we look at the game review, which I forgot to bring up here, we can see how white just grabbed the advantage and just built it up into a game-winning attack there at the end. And 99.3 Kasparov played in that game. So 99.3% accuracy versus 81.9. And Kasparov had 5 great moves and 2 brilliant moves. Now, he only had 1 inaccuracy, and his opponent had 4 inaccuracies and 3 mistakes. So, once again, we see where attacking the uncastled king there in the center and just opening things up and sending that king running, one of the side effects of that can be the chaos that it causes in your opponent's camp, and his pieces are uncoordinated, and you're able to just kind of jump in there and start chasing the king around, and he can't, with that king running everywhere, it opens up attacks on the other pieces, and it just causes a big mess. So to try and avoid that, I would recommend castling early and often. And there are exceptions if the center is really blocked up and there's no way that your opponent can really get to your king. You may not have to castle, but even then you have to be careful that a center that looks like it's closed, there may be a way to break that center open unexpectedly and get at the king. So just watch out for that. And some beginners think, well, if I castle, my king will be stuck in the center. well, the averages are that you'll have a lot less problems when you castle than the amount of problems you will have when you castle. You're just quite a bit safer with the king castled because you have 3 pawns to help protect you, usually a knight up here to help defend. And it's just harder to get to a castled king in general. There's always exceptions that you have to figure out and calculate at the board. All right, well, I hope you all enjoyed this attacking the uncastled king series here, or not series, this video in the Chess Beginner to Winner series, lesson 25. So for those who haven't liked and subscribed, please do so and support the channel. And feel free to leave suggestions, comments, requests, anything you would like in the comments. And thank you all for watching. Have a super chess day.